for vice presidents. They vote for presidents. It would have been a disastrous decision to replace a good man and a good vice president. It would have looked disloyal and desperate. That's the way we all felt at the time.
You took it seriously enough to poll it, though?
We felt that due diligence required that Caddy, let me tell you, we tested everything, and that was our job.
Everything but Obamacare.
But Obamacare, David Axelrod, we polled everything. They were talking about Hillary and Biden. The new book that's out, revealing that there was a possibility that Joe Biden would be replaced by Hillary Clinton on the ticket in 2012. And then Bob Woodward chimes in and says, you tested everything except Obamacare. But zinger. Joining us now is our friend Andy McCarthy, senior fellow at the National Review Institute, and best-selling author and columnist, and of course, Spring Fever: The Illusion of Islamic Democracy, out in paperback. Hello, Andy.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. How about those Jets?
Isn't that amazing? They're so up and down. I'm glad next week's supposed to be a down week, so it's the bye week. Maybe we'll get lucky.
Right, absolutely. Well, they played a great game against the Saints and come away with a win. And like you said, they've won one, they've lost one. They've won one against the Saints and come away with a win. And like you said, they've won one, they've lost one. They've actually won one recently. You wrote a great piece at National Review, The Art of the Impossible. The strategy to repeal Obamacare by winning serial elections is not even a Hail Mary pass, to, again, get back to a little football analogy there. Where do you think the Republicans should go from here? There's all kinds of talk that Obamacare, Obama himself might just, decree that this will be delayed until after the 2014 elections, which would be doing the Democrats a big favor. But what do you think the Republicans need to do here?
I think they ought to revisit their strident opposition to what Ted Cruz and Mike Lee were trying to do. As I've argued before, I think, to the extent that Lee and Cruz can be faulted for adopting a strategy that didn't have a real good chance to work, the one thing they banked on was Republican unity. So, if it was irrational to think that could happen, I guess that's a fair criticism. But if you go back to the beginning of the Obama administration, and Steve, nobody knows this better than you and I do. We were out, at that demonstration against Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and getting a civilian trial in Manhattan. You cannot tell me, looking at the historical record of the Obama administration, that these guys won't change their minds and they can't be moved by political pressure. They did it on that. They've done it on Gitmo. They did it on Bush tax cuts. And I think that if this got uncomfortable enough for them, as it was sure to once this started to roll out, they absolutely could have, the Republicans, accomplished at least a delay of Obamacare, if not an outright defunding of Obamacare. I don't think that was as crazy as people have suggested. I've pointed out that Obama himself has defunded Obamacare in essence by these waivers that he's given out. Obama himself has delayed Obamacare, and now, after weeks of telling us it was irrational to seek things like a delay, we now have Democrats calling for a delay of Obamacare.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's two schools of thought moving forward. One is, and I've talked to congressmen, talked to the CEO of Newsmax, Chris Ruddy, and Larry Kudlow agrees with him, and others do too, that it's best to just let the chips fall where they may. Don't help the Democrats. We were, some accused the Republicans of shutting down the government to get rid of Obamacare, or at least delay it, and Obama wouldn't even hear of it. None of them would hear of it. So don't give them any hope now. Don't give them any help now towards delaying this so the pain isn't felt until after the midterm elections. Let it be funded right now, and let it take effect right now. And other Republicans say, well, we have a responsibility to limit the pain constitutionally and otherwise, and if it could be delayed, then we'll delay it. But which way would you advise Republicans to go based on this, fork in the road, or these two choices?
Yeah, I absolutely think it's preposterous to think that this is going to collapse of its own weight. And, Steve, if you go back to the beginning of Medicare in the mid-1960s, We had strong Republican opposition to it, and certainly strong conservative opposition to it coming from Reagan in particular, but other precincts as well. Here we are half a century later, and the Republicans actually now run as the saviors of Medicare. And Medicare is 40, and the Republicans actually now run as the saviors of Medicare. And Medicare is 40. If that hasn't collapsed of its own weight, if $40 trillion is not collapsing of its own weight, what has to happen for something to collapse of its own weight? I happen to think that what's going on with what has to happen for something to collapse of its own weight. I happen to think that what's going on will happen is people will simply get used to it. There'll be, proposals to tweak it here and tweak it there, but we will be saddled with this thing forever. Proposals to tweak it here and tweak it there, but we will be saddled with this thing forever. But we've already heard the Democrats starting with, their talking points about that it's very few people. And once the website gets up and running and they see what kind of subsidies they're going to be entitled to, they'll have a whole different view of it. But the fact remains, a big component of this program are these subsidies. And if you're telling me that, we're a component of this program are these subsidies, and if you're telling me that, we're going for years in order to get both the White House and the margins that you would need, and that these Republicans who ran in the last election as the saviors of what they used to be against, these Republicans who ran in the last election as the saviors of what they used to be against, pull them, repeal Obamacare, and pull the subsidies that people have been
never
on? Yeah. Never happened.
Never going to happen.
I think, not only on the basis of strategy and tactics, but just on basic right and wrong. These people are the representatives of the American people. The American people are getting killed on this thing. And if there's anything they can do to derail it, I think they're obliged to derail it.
Which means to go along with a delay. Is that what you're saying?
Thing they can do, Steve, I think all strategies ought to be on the table, kind of like what Obama says about Iran, except I really mean this.
Well, what I'm afraid of, Andy, and we're talking to the great Andy McCarthy here on the Steve Malzberg Show, I know they're sort of sitting back and letting, and I want to get to the point of your column, too, which is basically that the establishment GOP is now in bed with the Democrats. Only difference is the degree to which the government should be involved in your health care, which I think is a brilliant point and a very important point. Having said that, also, I know they're sitting back and letting this all happen, and it's been good in the polls for them and bad for Obama and the Democrats, but they still haven't put forth, and I know there are plans out there, but why has it taken so long? Why aren't they on the steps of the Capitol every day when these stories come out every day, bringing forth women, a woman in today Wall Street Journal with cancer, the way Obama and the Democrats do, who's going to lose her insurance, who's going to have to start all over again, who's going to have doctors she doesn't know and doesn't trust and don't care about her the way her real doctors do or her current doctors. Why haven't they passed a plan, Andy? Why haven't they passed a plan that says, here's what we like about Obamacare, the donut hole, keep your insurance portable, no pre-existing conditions. Here's 5, 6 to 10 things, and this is what we're going to do, and they pass it in the House and say here. But they don't do anything. They do nothing.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Steve, and this is what I was trying to write about the last couple of weeks. Basically, the Republican establishment, and I don't mean to say all Republicans, and certainly not conservative Republicans, but the Republican establishment is fine with the welfare state. They want to argue about how big it should be. They particularly think that they have more credibility trying to run it in a fiscally responsible manner than the Democrats do. I would question actually whether that's the case after the Bush years, and particularly the Medicare entitlement, which is another unfunded mandate. I think they've lost a lot of their credibility in that regard. But that heightens or brings to the fore a basic division on the right, which is that you have conservatives who want free market solutions in toto to the hash that government has made of healthcare. They don't believe healthcare is a communal asset. They believe it's a commodity in the marketplace like any other, and that what government ought to do, other than enforcing the fraud statutes is get out of the way and completely get out of it. And then you have a lot of the Republicans, particularly in the Beltway, who think the welfare state is a good thing, think that healthcare regulation is a proper part of it, think it ought to be run from Washington, but trust us, we'll run it more economically and more efficiently than the Democrats will. And if you make a proposal, a positive proposal, here's what we'll do, you are going to front that debate, which they don't want to do. It's a lot easier to just say we hate Obamacare.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And it's so very frustrating. And, I was this point about Ted Cruz and being the most hated man in America, which, by the way, according to that infamous Wall Street Journal poll during the shutdown that supposedly forced Republicans to cave, also showed that total negatives, Obama and Harry Reid had a higher total negative than did Ted Cruz, simply because not enough people even knew who Ted Cruz was. But Ted Cruz, how could he promise this? How could he promise that? He misled the party. You hear that from Republicans. And here you got Barack Obama, who instead of, Barack Obama, the lie that he has been telling for 3 years,
right.
and the way they're now trying to spin this is, if we have, let's see if I can find, cut 16. Just listen to this explanation by Melissa Harris Perry from MSNBC, Andy. This is insane because even if she's right, Obama still lied, so it doesn't clear that. So here's cut 16.
I feel, Jerry, like part of what happened when the president said, if you like your plan, you can keep it, is that there was an assumption in the administration that people wouldn't like that plan, like the plan that still forced them to pay thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket costs, that was so sort of bare bones that people, in fact, wouldn't like it and would be wanting new plans. And now suddenly, at least you see on this concern trolling, this idea that people did like those plans, wanted to keep them.
In other words, he was lying, but counting on the fact that people wouldn't like the plan. That's her. That's her excuse for the lie.
Right. And why on earth would you think that? And assuming for argument's sake that you were irrational enough to think what she just said could possibly be true, why would you think it would be better to get a plan that was more comprehensive because it includes a bunch of services that you don't need? I mean, I'm a 54-year-old guy. I am not going to have an abortion. I don't need that to have that covered. Thank you very much. But why would you think that you not only needed these services that you don't need, but that you'd want to pay more money for them, and that you'd want to be involved in getting government subsidies if you were not somebody who was in the business of being on the government pad? I just don't see why.
Andy, here's the thing: as we're running out of time, these subsidies, if I'm not mistaken, go to premiums. They don't go to deductibles. Now, I may be wrong. I may be right. People have to learn a new word, deductible. I've heard $12,000 deductible from one woman. It's insane. No one could afford that. Andy, we'll speak to you soon, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Take care. The great Andy McCarthy, ladies and gentlemen. Check out his Spring Fever, The Illusion of Islamic Democracy. We're coming back right here. I'd love to hear from you. 877 Newsmax, 877-639-7629 on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.